Mobley to arrive, but said he'd just be about 4 or 5 minutes late, so no big concern. So how this is going to work is that each of the panelists is going to speak for about 5–10 minutes, give some brief introductory remarks, and then I know better than to try to lecture for an hour and a half and expect you guys to pay attention. So after that, we'll turn it over to Q&A with you guys and let the audience give some questions. So first of all, why are we here? What is the primary purpose for a meeting like this? I think the issue, for me anyway, is an issue of freedom. Every year in the state, we arrest 20,000 people for possession of cannabis, for the possession of a plant that grows out of the ground. Now, in a free society, the burden should be on the government to prove that any law is necessary, that if they want to put someone behind bars, that they are doing so for a good reason, that they have a good reason for doing that, that that's necessary for public safety or to enhance some important ideal. But I don't think that arresting people for the possession of cannabis passes that test. And so that's why, fundamentally, I think that we should be looking at how we administer these laws and actually repealing and legalizing and regulating cannabis the same way we do with alcohol, because we tried prohibiting alcohol, which is a much more dangerous substance, and clearly that did not work out. It took us only about 12 years to recognize that after we tried that in the 20s. We've been working on this failed experiment of marijuana prohibition for 75 years to no greater effect. So I think we really need to re-examine what we're doing here. And also, we've really waged a war on cannabis. I mean, they talk about the war on drugs. That's not a metaphorical statement. There is a quite literal war going on. And the topic of police militarization has become a hot issue lately. But the thing that people don't realize is that the reason that local officers are driving around in MRAPs and armored vehicles actually has very little to do with controlling crowd control or riots. That's actually something that has been a minor use of these types of weapons and tactics. The overwhelming majority of cases in which police use military equipment and military tactics are simply to serve drug warrants. 80% of the cases, in fact, according to federal statistics, are used to serve drug warrants where you have SWAT teams kicking in people's doors and oftentimes shooting people's pets just in an attempt to find drugs. And in fact, one of the more famous cases here in Missouri was one up in Columbia where the police kicked in the doors, the Columbia SWAT team, and they shot the man's 2 dogs, one of which was a corgi, which is not really known as a particularly dangerous breed. And the other dog was hit by a ricocheting bullet, which could have just as easily ended up in the man's young son who was sleeping in the next room. And what did the police find out of that? Well, they found a grinder with cannabis residue on it. That was the net of that search. So it wasn't like this guy's Pablo Escobar, Tony Montana, with a lot of guns that's some sort of great threat to public safety. He's just a small-time marijuana user, and we expended military-like police resources on that. And then we have to think about, so there's 6 or 7 police officers raiding this man's house. What could those 6 or 7 police officers been doing otherwise? That's a concept that economists refer to as opportunity cost. What are we giving up in order to get this? So in order to send all these police resources out to arrest people for cannabis, that means we're not going after other things. We're not going after rape. We're not going after murder. We're not going after robbery. Property crimes in this country, only about 1 out of 5 property crimes is an arrest made and charges brought by the prosecutor. So that means 80% of the time in property crime cases, the person gets away with it. In rape cases, it's about 50% of the time. Now, I think we have better places that we can put our law enforcement resources than going after people for possession of cannabis. So, what are we doing about this? Well, at Show Me Cannabis, we are focused on 2 main areas. We started out just focused on the initiative petition and trying to put the question of legalization before the voters. We started doing that in 2012. We didn't make the ballot in 2012, but we are committed to doing that. And we will put a measure before the voters. Our plan is in 2016. We will file ballot language, or we will file our petition language with the Secretary of State, probably towards immediately following the 2014 elections this year. The Secretary of State will take about a month, maybe 2 months, to get that back to us with ballot language, and then we can start circulating petitions at the end of this year or beginning of next year to put this on the ballot in 2016. And that'll give us about a year and a half to get roughly 160,000 signatures from registered Missouri voters. And we're very confident that we'll be able to do that. However, at the same time, we're also going to be working through the legislature. The legislature has become much more willing to talk about this issue. And as Gary can tell you in here in a minute, is a couple years ago we went down there for the first times. People in the legislature wouldn't even open their doors to us, wouldn't talk to us. But now it's a much warmer conversation. People are opening up to the idea, especially on medical cannabis, that this is something that could be good for Missouri. And so I think we can really get something good medical marijuana legislation passed through the legislature, or at least put on the ballot by the legislature. I don't think that's going to be possible with the full legalization stuff, but medical marijuana, I think, is something that can be worked on through the legislative process. And that's something that we continue to work on while the legislature is in session. And also, it's something that you can help us work on, because if you call up your representative, and actually there is someone from Representative Lynn Morris who is in this district, someone from his office here tonight, so if you want to talk to her or talk to Representative Morris, schedule a time to meet with them. That's an excellent way of telling your representatives how you feel about this issue. And I'll tell you that, especially at the state level, state and local level, your elected officials really will listen to you. When you're talking about the U.S. Congress and senators, it's tough, because a senator in Missouri represents 6 million people. In order to break through all the noise, you have to have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people contacting them. But for a state representative or state senator, 5, 10 phone calls, that gets their attention. So, be out there, be active, talking to your state officials, and then also anything that you can do to, once we start gathering petition signatures, if you can help us circulate a petition, if you can just sign it, anything like that. I would also ask that you, get yourself registered to vote. I can't tell you how many times I saw in our 2012 effort that people would be, and there's Dr. Mobley, thank you for arriving. I can't tell you how many times people would ask to sign the petition, and then we'd ask, well, where are you registered to vote? And they would say, oh, I don't think I am registered to vote. Well, that's a problem, because if you're not registered to vote, you can't sign a petition, you obviously can't vote on the question, and so we really need everyone to be signed up and registered to vote. I do have some voter registration forms here with me. I don't know if I set them out here yet, but if you're not registered to vote, please see me after the meeting, and we can get that taken care of for you. All right, so now I think I'll hand it off. We'll just go down the line here. First I'd like to introduce Sergeant Gary Wiegert. He is a sergeant with the St. Louis Police Department. He has served in the department for 34 years. He's also lobbied for Show Me Cannabis and for the St. Louis Tea Party. So he's going to present a law enforcement perspective on why our cannabis laws aren't working, and also the Tea Party limited government perspective for why they need to be reformed. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gary Wiegert, and I've been a police officer for 34 years. And so I always have to start off with this disclaimer. Any comments made by me here are solely my comments and are not the official comments of the St. Louis Police Department. And that was one of the agreements initially when I came on as lobbyist 2 years ago, almost 2 years now. The department had approved me to work to lobby. They just didn't know I was going to lobby for Show Me Cannabis. And they revoked that. They revoked that. And then I ended up having to have a lawyer sue, and we in fact won. So now I'm able to lobby. So, and then I always pass this story on. John's had to listen to this a million times. But the day after they allowed me to lobby, they ordered me to go down and take a urine test. That just tells you how the police department reacts to all of this. I mean, they're very afraid of any type of change. So anyway, back first to the Tea Party. I also lobbied for the St. Louis Tea Party. Bill Hennessy, the president of the St. Louis Tea Party, has come out in favor of this. And the reason why is because it's the fiscally responsible thing to do. And that's one of the tenets of the Tea Party. Second one is less government in our lives. And what this is this is the government in our lives telling us what we can and cannot do. It is not up to the federal government to tell us what we do here in Missouri. It is up to Missourians to do that. And so that's another one of the reasons why the St. Louis Tea Party supports this too. Originally, when I became a policeman, police officers had a lot of discretion. You know, I don't know what this kind of turns off. I just read it. Anyway, police officers had a lot of discretion, and so we would stop somebody that would have some marijuana. We would throw it down the sewer. We'd throw it away in a trash can. We didn't really bother to arrest people with marijuana. At that time, police officers had a lot of discretion to do that. That's what society wanted us to do. That's what we did. Now things have kind of changed. You know, now policemen have cameras in their cars. Heck, we have police departments now that have cameras in their buttons. They carry them. Now police officers can no longer throw that marijuana away. They are on record. They have to arrest you. So once police officers lost that discretion, they now have to take action and lock you up. I mean, this is actually worse. We used to be able to turn it into a nothing event, and now it's into a crime. And as a matter of fact, when I first came on, a lot of the police officers would actually make fun of you if you brought somebody in with a marijuana arrest. And I've made hundreds of marijuana arrests over the years. I've made thousands of drug arrests over the years. And to tell you the truth, the marijuana arrests have had no impact. Things are still the same, no different than it was 34 years ago. You still see the same amount of marijuana on the street. And now we have policies like hotspot policing. I don't know if you all have that down here or not. Hotspot policing is you grab all these police officers and you put them into one area. And so they try to affect crime in that area. So basically you're just stopping people. You're gonna, what they're looking to do is make a number of arrests. And what type of arrests do you make? You make bench warrant arrests, which are the easiest thing to do out there, and then you make marijuana arrests. And so what police do on it is they pick the low-hanging fruit, and those are the people you put in jail. It really doesn't make any impact on crime, whether you lock somebody up for not paying traffic tickets or for a marijuana arrest, but this is what police departments do. One of the reasons that it's important that when police first stop people with marijuana and they pitch it, because they had more important things to do than arrest people for marijuana. So police work really is a matter of priorities. And every community, every city has their own priorities, what's important. In the city of St. Louis, arresting someone for marijuana just isn't a high priority. We have other business to take care of there. And I tell a little story, poor John's had to hear this many times, but I tell a story. We were having a problem in St. Louis. We had we still have a cocaine problem. And so we had a number of cocaine dealers, and a lot of the street corner sales are right on these street corners. They actually flag people down and they make the sales. And so we were having trouble with these cocaine sales. And they ended up shooting a number of their customers, all in the same location. They were ripping off their own customers. So we actually had a number of people shot. We had one killed. And so we decided to do something about it. And so I was sent over to the street corner apprehension team. And what that is you send in an undercover guy. He comes in and makes the purchase. You know, you give him 20 bucks for some crack cocaine, and then we swoop in and then you arrest him. And it's a buy bust. It's a real quick deal. So we were having problems with that. So I got sent to that unit, and so we were setting up on these area drugs corners where these shootings and the murder had happened. And what happened is we had so many people that were coming up to our undercover guy wanting to sell them marijuana, we had to chase them away. I mean, really. I mean, it's a problem. We want to make the cocaine deals, but we got people running up trying to sell marijuana. We had to chase them away. Now, if you're on camera, believe me, you will end up having to arrest these people. But we were able to use our discretion and pick our priorities, and we chased them off the corner. And then eventually, after we chased them off, one of the cocaine dealers came up, spoke to our undercover guy, and we had it all on tape, where he said, hey, here's what I charge, here's what's going on. Don't give me any trouble, I don't want to have to shoot you like I shot that guy 2 days ago. And that was the murder case, by the way. So at that, the transaction was made, we swoop in, we arrest him, and then when we told him that we were charging him with murder because he just admitted to killing the guy 2 days ago, he went to pieces. He ended up telling us, actually he was just a witness to it, but he was bragging, trying to impress these people. But he told us where the gun was, told us where the person was, told us the whole event. He was actually a witness to it. He was on the corner that day. And the reason I tell this story is if our priorities would have been wrong and we would have took down those marijuana dealers, we might never have caught that guy who did the murder. So this is what police work is about, and marijuana just isn't one of the high priorities of police work. Another story I tell about police work, and this is a little bit about what finances, and the drug war finances a lot of stuff with police. What I experienced in St. Louis is Well, here, let me give you just a quick rundown. When the police seize money, state law says that the money will go to the revolving school fund. But when we seize that money, we give it to the feds, they keep 20%, and then they kick 80% back to the local jurisdictions. So what you have in these little munis and little local jurisdictions is you're chasing the dollar. So they're not too worried about the drugs, but they do want the money. And I've experienced this in St. Louis, where I had a little muni come in with 8 officers and a dog. They do a search, they arrest somebody, they dump the arrest on us because I'm in the city. They give us the arrest, and then they leave. And they take the drugs, and they take the money, and then they give it to the federal government, and then they get 80% back. And that tells you what drives these little municipalities. And you know what? This is one of the problems. You know, everybody follows what's going on in Ferguson. And these are one of the problems out there. You've got these little munis that are chasing the dollar, whether it's through tickets or through drug seekers. And so this is another important thing about the war on marijuana, is the police, in fact, are chasing the dollar. Another thing I'd like to bring up is some of the disparities in arrests. And most people don't know this, and I think this is fueled the fire up there in Ferguson. By the way, I was up in Ferguson, I was only up there one day, and as well as it looks on TV and whatnot, it's much crazier if you're there in person. Trust me on that one. It is a lot worse to be there in person than you see on TV. Anyway, a lot of the animosity in the black community there is, I'll just give you some numbers, and you can draw your own conclusions. In the United States, for every 4 blacks who are arrested for possession of marijuana, 1 white's arrested. In the state of Missouri, every white who's arrested, there's 2.5 blacks arrested. In St. Louis City, for every 1 white who's arrested, 18.4 blacks are arrested. So that tells you what's going on with this disparity in arrests. And I think that tells you what's going on in places like Ferguson, where people do not perceive this as being fair. And that kind of explains why you see riots and whatnot going on out there. Now, I'm not blaming that on the marijuana, but it's just another little part of the puzzle of why there's a lot of problems going on out here. And it's basically an enforcement. So basically, in conclusion, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what's been going on. As John alluded to, 2 years ago, we'd go in the legislator's office that laugh us out. And people thought it was funny and a joke. Well, now this has picked up a lot of steam. And so we've had 4 bills down there for the last 2 years. One is industrial hemp.